All right, so now we've got sort of like you can't ask that, but we are going to ask that. You can ask that. So, first question, how did it start for you? Penny, would you like to go first?
Start for me. A self-loathing, I think, of myself, which is part of, my mental health illness. Like, because I have bipolar as well, it just took over. As I said, it wasn't about an image thing for me. It was purely just that my mind was sending these messages to me to say to stop actually rewarding my body. So it was a real mind game.
Mine was, I had very strict upbringing, so every time I asked to do something that I knew my parents probably would say no to, I just kept asking and hoping that they would say yes. It was a lot like my big fat Greek wedding. So when the classic line I always got back was subjects closed, don't want to talk about it. So when I finished school, which was the only place I saw my friends, I got sad. But I know before this point I had a lot of anxiety and depression, probably from the ages of about 14 to 18, that was probably not diagnosed. So when I finished school and didn't see my friends, I just got a little bit sad, and one of the signs of a developing mental illness is changes in food and sleeping patterns. So for me it was never a conscious, I'm going on a diet. I didn't need to. I just got sad. So my eating habits changed. And when they did, Mum and Dad were like, oh, what's wrong? Are you okay? And I just went, I've got your attention now. You're listening to me. So I thought, if I start eating again, they're not going to listen to me. And it was that thought that set me on a path. And then it was really hard to come out of that because I was frightened I wouldn't be listened to. And for me, that equated to you're not loved unless they're listening to you. So it became complicated with this.
Mine is a bit similar to yours too, I think. I came from a really strict upbringing. So I didn't have control of a lot of things that were happening in my life. So I think this is probably the only thing I could control, and it was my own little secret. And I think just being brought up always really restrictive on what foods I could eat. And that having the food without anybody watching was sort of like a win for me, because I could do it without anyone knowing. So I was still getting the food that I wanted, but they all thought that I wasn't. And I was doing exactly what they wanted me to do. And that was all my life. Like, it's always been like that. I think, and even growing up and becoming a teenager, and my body was changing, started to get bigger, putting on weight, puberty. I just dieted, I think, since my mum put me on diets when I was about 14, 15. I started dieting. Always, you gotta lose weight, I wasn't really a big girl, to be honest. And it just carried on. I'm like 40 this year now. And it was just, got used to it being that way. I didn't know any different.
So, and I also had that sitting around the dinner table. We were saying that before. So sitting around the dinner table is just like, you cannot leave the table until everything on that plate is gone. It's just like, why do parents force us as children, as adolescents, you're growing up, you have no idea about nutrition and the way that we should think, yet they say, finish everything that's on your plate. There's starving children around the world. Of course there is. But that doesn't mean that you should have to finish everything on that plate.
If you're full.
If you're full. If your brain and your stomach, and you've put, as a parent, you know exactly how much nutrition and food you give to a child. And just because that doesn't finish it, that doesn't mean that, that's poor parenting or,
So what did you become obsessed with? Like, once it started, we've just all mentioned how it started for us. What was the obsession?
I think it was just getting away with it for me. Like, I don't know, like being able to have what I wanted to have. And I think being restricted, you wanted it more. So if I was allowed to have, an extra piece of cake for someone's birthday, then I'll probably just have it and be satisfied. Whereas when I couldn't have it, I wanted to eat the whole cake. So I think it got worse, but I don't think anyone realised how bad it got, because I hid it really well. So I would go to diets and they'd be like, why are you not losing weight? You know, you're only having the shake and you're only having this, you're only...
There are studies to show that rigid eating behaviours and you know, like you said, like you grew up and you were only supposed to eat like clean foods and, you know, only one little slice of cake, or you were put on diets when you were like 14. So like being in a very rigid eating patterns or restricted food selection can actually trigger unhealthy thought patterns and unhealthy relationship with food and eating disorders. So it's definitely your trigger.
And it's so hard now when you see other young girls and you can sort of see it happening. And you know, you just sit back and you just know, like, well, that was me. You know, let her have that extra cupcake. Because in her mind, she's going to get that extra cupcake. Whether you give it to her, she's going to go get it herself. You know, it's especially coming from a Lebanese background. Everything we ate was with bread. And I wasn't allowed to have bread. But bread was our main part of mealtime. You know, so everyone's having bread except for because my mum wouldn't eat bread either because she didn't want to put on weight. So I would just
I think parents and anyone of influence in our lives who has a problem that they haven't dealt with are very easily teaching it to their children. And you don't know what effect, I know it takes different personality types, and developing any mental illness, there's a whole lot of factors that come into play, but I think we need to consider what our attitudes and how our attitudes are affecting the people around us when it comes to what they're learning. And that's one thing I did, especially with my children. So I had anorexia in my late teens, early 20s, but I know that when my marriage split up, the unhealthy emotions that arose at that time were exactly the same as what I was trying to deal with in my teenage years. So I went back to the only coping mechanism I knew, which was eat less, run more. But I thought my kids are going to learn this off me, and they were teenagers. So I'm grateful that I recognised it enough to take myself to the doctor. But I became obsessed with, at that time in my late teens, the calorie counting, because not because of a body shape issue. I was never overweight. It was, I am frightened to let this go because I will not be loved and listened to if I do. It was like that Shawshank Redemption quote where it says these walls are funny, at first you hate them and then you get used to them and then it's like you can't live without them. And if anyone challenged me on, you know, why don't you eat more, or you exercise so much, it's like, don't you dare take this away from me because I don't know how to cope if you do. And if it was a coping, it was not that I was coping, it was out of control and hurting me, but I saw it as coping.
It's an unhealthy coping mechanism a lot of the time, the eating behaviours, or, you know, not eating, binge eating, or binge purging, you know, whatever unhealthy, you know, behaviours that you have in regards to food and exercise. It's a coping strategy to something that you're not able to cope with otherwise. And it is like a bit of an epidemic here